Actually, I would like to say that the world of breathing is a quite new world, but in the same time is very ancient, as you know. It's more than 5,000 years before Christ. So there is a long story, but just recently it has been discovered that many benefits from the world of breathwork with different typologies of breathing exercises.
There is also a chemical aspect. Every time we breathe in a certain way, it can change our brain fluid chemistry. And maybe that's also, one of the reasons why we start thinking in certain ways, like negative thoughts or fearful thoughts.
You're solving, or you're helping yourself more than solving. You're helping yourself with just one very simple technique with many different fields.
Yeah, let's go one by one, because I'm sure our listeners are now wondering, okay, so neuroscience, and let's first start there, like neuroscience and breath work, and with the whole study you've been doing around neuroscience. When you look at breath work, what can you tell us? I mean, I know some answers, but I think you would give us like more details on how breathing changes the neurology and how it supports the whole neurological system, or daily breath work, and which techniques are the best for that. And then we'll go to the psychology side of it, and then we can go from there to athletes and corporates.
Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, this is a very, very wide question that you're asking, because actually, I would like to say that the world of breathing is a quite new world, but in the same time is very ancient, as you know. It's more than 5,000 years before Christ. So there is a long story, but just recently it has been discovered that many benefits from the world of breathwork with different typologies of breathing exercises, from just awareness of the breath, from slow breathing exercises or hyperventilation, Wim Hof-like meditation, or also, for example, Sudarshan Kriya Yoga, for example, can have a big impact on not only on our brain, but also on our metabolism, our psychophysiology, but also our behavior. So we can start from there. Usually, in the context, every context, when we are localized in a context, there is an emotional tonality. So we are emotionally localized in a certain context. So for example, if you're receiving a bad news or a good news, it's still an emotional impact. And as we are going to behave, for example, you're afraid, you're going to breathe in and open your mouth when you're scared. Also, the breath will be involved as a reaction to this behavior. So there are many typologies of breathing correlated to our emotions. But this breathing exercise, for example, this breathing reaction will trigger emotions, but also in the end, emotions will trigger a certain pattern of breathing. So many things will occur. For example, if you're going to tend to hyperventilate, we're going to notice that your frontal lobes that are involved in executive functions, for example, or also the connectivity of your brain, the functionality of your electroencephalogram will change. For example, just breathing orally, you are tendentially activating the left sphere of your brain. But if you're breathing through the nose, we can see that the activation and the pattern, the electric pattern, are more functional and diffused into your brain. So this is why also with the oxygen advantage, especially with Patrick McKeown, we're talking a lot about that usually when I meet him. And we talk about the importance of nasal breathing in our everyday life, not only for the biochemical aspect about oxygen or carbon dioxide, or the biomechanical aspect linked to our diaphragm, but also our psychophysiological system and our brain, how our brain can easily work. For example, if we tend to hyperventilate, we are noticing that people with depression, for example, have excessive bad rumination, meaning that they're still thinking about the same bad things every time. But just correcting a little bit of their breathing and their breathing pattern, you can help them to improve and reduce the impact of those symptoms. So there is a big world there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been in my own research and in my own studies, I've been seeing that because respiration regulates the body fluid chemistry, because it changes the body fluid chemistry. I think there is also a chemical aspect. Every time we breathe in a certain way, it can change our brain fluid chemistry, and maybe that's also one of the reasons why we start thinking in certain ways, like negative thoughts or fearful thoughts, because it's either too alkaline or too acidic, because it's not
Yes.
ideal. It doesn't have the perfect 7.4 pH. And I've been like, this is my own area which I'm interested in. And I found that the body fluid chemistry, when it's 7.4, like magically, we start feeling balanced and we start thinking in an inspired way, and we're more connected with ourselves. But then when the body fluid chemistry changes, our thoughts change, our thought pattern changes, and then our emotions and how we feel changes. So that's the area I've been researching on and reading and studying. So these are all, these are all affecting each other, of course, because the body is very much complicated than we can, ever imagine. Okay, when we look at the psychological side of it, which we started, actually, we did, and also like the athletes, because our team is asking what are the benefits of breathwork for professional sport performers, and also, like you said, there is competition in sports world and also in the corporate world. So I will ask the question, like, how can people who are in an environment, in a very much competitive environment, benefit most from breath work, whether it be in a competitive corporate environment or a competitive sports environment? How have you been able to help them and support them?
Okay, very easy. So this question is very more specific. So I would start every time with nasal breathing, with functional breathing. So a breathing pattern that answers your metabolic capacities, that do not go beyond your metabolism, your metabolic request. So what do I mean by that? I mean hyperventilation syndrome, for example, like this breathing like this, or the sense of breathlessness, or excessive sighing, for example. All of those elements, and many of them that I'm forgetting right now and that didn't mention, are correlated to a bad functional breathing. And if we are talking about sport athletes or professional sport athletes, it doesn't mean that they have a very correct breathing or breathing pattern. So on the first sight, and due to the fact that the way how we breathe during the day and during the night will also have an impact about how we breathe during performance, we have to first correct the breathing functionality, first of all. And this is the first aspect where I intervene. The other thing that we have to understand is, why do we need a good breathing? So the functional breathing will help us during performance. While, for example, performing, I don't know if you do some kind of sport or if you do some kind of strong yoga, but a sense of air hunger will appear. And usually the sense of air hunger is correlated to the fact that we release a lot of carbon dioxide. So instead of, usually people will say, yes, we need more oxygen. No, we have to tolerate more CO2. We have to have a better tolerance to the sense of air hunger while performing. But the biggest problem, especially in the world of sport, is a lot of emphasis has been put over performance, but a little bit less on recovery. So now we have to know how to perform in recovering, for example. So we can use different breathing exercises for a more functional aspect after a training, from a passive aspect in order to recover, for sleeping also, or for learning stress management tools and other stuff. For example, we need to learn how to focus during performance, to bring just your attention to your breath, just in order to calm down your mind activity, is something very useful if you have to focus. Pay attention to the fencers, just the fencers, the way how they have to target things. I'm working a lot with fencers or soccer players during a penalty. They have to slow down their wandering mind and just to untouch from their thoughts in order to perform better and avoid any kind of pessimistic approach or actions. But on the other side, also, the way how you sleep is very important if you want to learn how to focus, to have a proper and fresh sleep when you wake up fresh, and especially, and if you sleep in a very good way without snoring or without having obstructive sleep apnea. But I work with a lot of soccer players and MMA fighters. There is a thing, to a certain level, I will tell you that episode with one of them. He was working, he was doing a championship in MMA, and as soon as he came back to his closet, he had a paper with all his statistics. So you have pressure every time. So you don't get rid of pressure. Many of them will tell you you have to know how to cohabitate with pressure. But if you have some breathing exercise in order to have some kind of pause or mental pause or a different way of having a coffee, because coffee will activate you, you will have a very functional pause for you, a functional break in this case. And this will help you to handle such kind of pressure. So the breathing exercise will help you just resuming everything. It will help you to handle performance, to keep your mind sharp, especially, for example, for militaries and those or soldiers, which is really important. But on the other side, it will help you to recover. And on the other side, from a sports psychology point of view, it will help you to focus and to just untouch from your thoughts in such case. So there is a wide panel of breathing exercise. And then not every sport athlete would use the same breathing exercise. For example, in my case, or with certain other athletes' case, they won't want to do some kind of hyperventilation exercise. They prefer something more slowish, while others, they will ask you to just more be activated. I don't know. I wanted to cover
Yeah.
many things,
Yeah,
and this is a very
that's
wide
great.
topic.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I want to also tap into something more on the physiological side. And I'm a tennis player myself, so I'm
Yep.
very interested in tennis, watching Wimbledon. I have a tennis player father, a husband. Everybody in the house is, we're very
Wow.
interested in the whole tennis world. And you probably heard 2 years ago, actually, not last year, but the year before in Wimbledon, a famous tennis player, Emma Raducanu, maybe you heard of it. She was a brilliant tennis player, had to quit her game due to difficulty in breathing. And she
Okay.
struggled to breathe, and she had to retire her fourth round match, and she had to quit Wimbledon, which is kind of like a huge thing.
Yep.
Which is kind of like a huge thing. It's like for me, when I heard that, when I saw that, I was like, wow, we really need to help all these people in the competitive world because they are probably hyperventilating. I mean, it's like if you're in competition playing tennis or competitive sports, you're probably a performance breather. It's like you need to breathe real deep during the match and all that. And she's probably having a hard time relaxing her breath afterwards. And due to that, just imagine you worked whole your life for, Wimbledon, and you're this really talented woman, and you have to quit Wimbledon because you have difficulty in breathing, nothing to do with the match or what you did. And then afterwards, I also heard there was an interview with Nadal, and she revealed that he had breathing difficulties and felt like a needle, and he started having these problems as well. So there is this thing along around I believe tennis players or people who are, in the competitive sports industry, they are probably breathing, not probably, definitely breathing too much during the games, during the matches, and then they're finding it hard to relax their breathing. And I started thinking they all need a sports coach. They all need a breathing coach, so a breath coach, a breath teacher to teach them how to balance their breath and how to manage their breath, because it's not only psychological. Now we start, hearing more on the physiological levels as well. I want to hear your ideas around that because you work with athletes.
The thing is, concerning this kind of hyperventilation and the origin and the nature of the problem that gave the origin of that kind of hyperventilation is very difficult sometimes to spot out. Why? Because the problem can be multifactorial. So a good assessment is very important, but at least the most important thing is to give to those people, and this is what I usually do through my work, is to give them some very small, short tools in order to calm down. The problem, because if you give, for example, a very specific tool, the coherence breathing, you just breathing for 5 seconds and breathe out for 5 seconds, and your heartbeat and your breathing pattern will start to synchronize. This can have a very tremendous benefit over your whole psychophysiology, and then also on your psychology impact then, and you're solving, or you're helping yourself more than solving, you're helping yourself with just one very simple technique with many different fields. And you will help why it is important to do those kind of breathing exercises. For HRV and improving your heart rate variability? No. To calm down your stress? Yes, but not only. It is very important for one very simple thing: to improve your existing condition. What do I mean by that? If you wanted to be a professional tennis player in your case, and you want to get the best of yourself, using the breathing exercise will give you more possibilities of action over yourself, over your opponent, but over the situation itself. So increasing also the probability of the success or your own specific goals in order to reach a certain objective in this case. This is why it is really important to have a breathing expert close to you